So there is a lot to go over. So please pardon me if I have to go rather quickly through some of the slides. I always think that if you at least know something exists and you can look it up later, that you're better off than not knowing that it exists, okay? So of course, all of us get very frustrated when we have got the proverbial red X or white X in a red box, if you will. These are the things that you need to consider if you want to have a successful upload. We first of all have to make sure that we upload without errors, then that we have no validation errors, then we have no DQE errors, and then we have no ETL errors. So we're going to look at each one of these sections rather quickly, okay? Upload errors. All right. One of the good things about the upload errors is that you can mouse over and you can see exactly what the error is. One of the most obvious errors would be that you're trying to upload a file to a collection that does not belong to that file, all right? So we can see here that we have got staff updates as our collection, but we are trying to upload a student file. So obviously that's going to stop you right there. Okay, next one is that you've got the file named incorrectly. Yes, this is the right collection. It is the bus collection right here, as we can see, but we have named it bus underscore location underscore fact, and that is not correct. It should just be a location underscore fact template. And we can find these names that we need to use in volume 1 of the Pims manual. And we'll take a look at that. This is a portion of the manual that you would be looking at to find out how to name your file. And it's called the target table. So you always start out with your AUN underscore the target table name as you see it here. So that would be location underscore fact, then another underscore, and then your timestamp. And you can see that there are occasions when you're going to have a file named exactly the same thing, but it's going to be for different collections. That's when you have to be careful that you upload to the correct collection, because if you upload a location underscore fact for the bus to the fire and security, it will in fact upload, but then you will get all sorts of errors because the data doesn't match. Okay, another common mistake that I see is that we have spaces in the name of the file. And sometimes it's hard to see those spaces. You can also see here that the person's got a double underscore. If you have either a space or a double underscore, then you are going to err as well. And while we are looking at this particular spot, you can see that there is a place to check whether you have a header or not. If you check that you do have a header and you don't, it will eliminate your first line of data. You won't get an error, but it will eliminate your first line of data. If you don't check that you have a header and you do, then you will get an error for that header because it will assume that it is supposed to be data and the data is not matching the header. So that's an important box to look at when you do an upload. Okay, the timestamp could be incorrect as well. And we can see here that the hour was not appropriately designated. It should have been 03 or a 13, whichever that might be. And I've also seen it error when you have your minutes being something that's not logical. Like if you have 75 minutes, which you would not have when you're telling time. So that's another important thing to look at. Okay, you also cannot upload an empty file. There are times when, yes, a template is something you're supposed to upload, but it is actually a conditional upload. So if you don't have any weapons in safe schools, you would not be uploading that file just to show that you don't have any. You would not upload it at all. So a 0 kilobyte file has no data and will not upload for you. Okay, another error that you might get is that the file already exists in the system. Let's say that you have successfully uploaded a file, but it has errored in File Manager, and you then decide, okay, I better take that file and fix it. You do so, you try to upload again with the same name, it's not going to let you do that. So you have an option of either deleting what's in File Manager or simply changing, say, the 5 to a 6 so that it appears to be a different file. Now we're looking at validation errors, and they appear in the File Manager. The File Manager only looks at the file and the fields in it. It does no comparisons with other files or other uploads. It strictly looks at that file and what you have in that file. So when you first log into Pims, you're going to see a screen that looks like this. This is your home screen, okay? And it will tell us some things. So for example, if there is a system message alerting you that, that there is an internal snapshot taking place, and therefore you're not going to have any collections open. You will also see the actual collections that are open. If the collection is not there, you obviously cannot upload to that collection. And we also have a list of DQE rules, which there can be a lot of them depending on the file. This is very handy because you can see exactly what you need to have correct in that file, or it is going to err. This is the center section, which defines each collection. This is really important because it shows you exactly what files can be uploaded. Time and again, we have people perhaps trying to upload the staff assignment, the staff snapshot to the staff update. You can see that that's not possible. It will only accept the staff file. So this is a good place to look, especially if you're not sure. You're saying, well, I don't know where the district fact goes. I don't know where to upload that to. And you would be able to look at the collections and you would be able to see, okay, that would be uploaded in that particular collection. So that is also a good resource for you. This is just a sample of what you might be looking at if you look at your DQE errors, okay? And we can see here, for example, a student with an IEP needs to have a challenge type. So a blank challenge type in that situation would err. All right, now back to our File Manager possible errors. And once again, we are looking at just that file. So you could have a PA Secure ID that's not correct. You could have a date format that's not in ISO. You could have a missing required field. You could have conditionally required fields that are missing. And we'll look a little bit later at what exactly a conditionally required field is. You can have invalid field combinations so that two things that need to go together are not valid the way they are placed in the file. You could have an invalid code set, and that would basically, that would be your values, all right? You can't have a Y if the value is yes. And obviously the header rows that we talked about, if you don't check that you have one and you do, that's going to err. Okay, so we have two places that we can look to find those errors. We can either look in the highlighted area or we can look in the list view area. When you look at File Manager, this is what you will see. And this is really just a holding tank for your files. So once you have them validated, you can upload as many files as you want, but you have to batch files that belong together. You can't just batch a file from one collection with a file from another collection. So we can see here that everything is fine except for our student file. So that did not pass validation. And once again, we have the option of the highlighted or just looking at it from an error list. I like the highlighted. And we can also look at our source file to see exactly what's in our source file. This is an example of the error list. And you can see that it shows you the key fields, the error message values, which identify the field and the values in the error. So this is great if you want to look at it in a list view in that fashion. I really like the highlighted because if I mouse over that red, I get to see exactly what's wrong. A lot of people don't realize this, and this is just a marvelous tool to be able to use, because even if you're not understanding, it will come up with a message that's pretty clear for you. In this case, it's telling us that if the graduation status is any one of those codes, that you must have a graduate, postgraduate, or post-dropout activity listed. We can have an incorrect ID. The ID should refresh every minute in production, every hour in the sandbox. So in the sandbox, if it's brand new, you might not see it for an hour. But you could have an incorrect ID. Maybe it's retired, maybe it was just not put in there correctly. And once again, we have both of our views, the list view and the highlighted view. The dates, if you open your file, you are going to probably lose your formatting for certain things. You're going to lose your formatting for the dates. You're going to lose your formatting for grade levels. Anything that would require preceding zeros is going to be stripped out. So you don't want to open things in Excel because you are going to lose that formatting, and it might take you a lot of trouble to have to go through and make those things text boxes and then have to put the values back in. If you can look at it in a CSV editor or in TextEdit or Notepad, that's fine, but you don't want to open it in Excel. This is an example of a required field that's not there, needs to be there. And as you can see, part of the manual tells us that. Column 4 tells us whether it's required, optional, or conditionally required. And this is an example of a conditionally required. Conditionally required means if I say yes to this, then I need to have something in another part of the file as well. So if I say, yes, you are an 01 or an 06 EL, which is a current status, then I need to also have something in field 221. Once again, if you mouse over either one of those red areas, you can see exactly what the problem is. The values are normally case sensitive, which is something that you need to pay attention to. We can see here for the AED that new, good, fair, poor, or NA are case sensitive. And if you don't put them in that fashion, you will get an error. Also, the value has to be an acceptable value. One of the problems with the enrollment is that a lot of people will keep in their SIS the old enrollment codes as they used to exist because they like what they defined, and they may not even be aware of what goes into the actual Pims file. Generally, your SIS will map that for you, but you might be a little confused as to what needs to belong in there. Appendix E is an excellent source because it will show you all of those enrollment codes and exactly what they mean. Here's an example of a header row that was not checked off, and so therefore it believes that all of those things are incorrect. And here, once again, is where we want to make sure on our upload to check that it does have a header. Okay, we're now going to take a look at the Dqe errors. This is a place where we do comparisons. And this is also where you need to batch those files that go together in the collection. You can't batch something from one collection and batch something from another collection. So here's where we would be looking at what we already sent up to the warehouse, as we call it, to Pims reports, or what was in there last year compared to this year, or what might be in a file that you are uploading with it together. If there are inconsistencies, then you're going to find them in the errors in the DQE section. Okay, this could be a little confusing for people because DQE complete means it's wrong. Okay, it doesn't just mean that you finished looking at DQE, it means that something's wrong, and you can see the red check there. So once again, we want to view errors. And we have our long list here of things that were checked in those files, and we have our list of what did not pass. Sometimes there is a percentage issue where they will allow actually a certain percentage of what you might consider to be an error to go through. Most of the time, 0% is what's allowed. You have to have it correct. But sometimes there is a threshold, shall we say. And in this case, for our EL students, there is a threshold. If you upload only 4 students and 2 of them would be in excess of what they consider to be a threshold percentage, then you may get that error, when in fact, actually you don't have 50% of all of your EL students, but you do have 50% of the ones that you sent up there. And this example is like the alternate access for EL. They don't imagine that you should have more than 10% of your EL students using that access, that alternate access. So if you are correct, you do a data exception. All right, and we're going to talk a little bit about data exceptions later, what you can and can't do with data exceptions. Okay, these are probably one of the more pesky errors that you're going to get, because it means possibly going to PA Secure ID and having to fix things there. So it's checking the name, the birth date, the gender with what's already been uploaded to PA Secure ID. If they are different, you're going to get an error. You need to see what is correct. Am I correct? Is PA Secure correct? If PA Secure is not correct, you have to fix it. And I would most definitely say to you, please call us if you've never done this. It's not necessarily intuitive, and it's very easy to create a duplicate ID if you're not sure what you're doing. So please don't hesitate to call us and let us walk you through that. Okay, grade 9 entry dates are always a bugaboo for people, and they don't always understand them. This is a range error. So we are not saying that the grade 9 entry date is wrong. Sometimes people will fix their grade 9 entry date and then they'll say, but I still got it, now I got another error. They're not complaining about the grade 9 entry date. They're complaining about the date compared to the grade level. So it might appear that the student should be in a different grade level according to the grade 9 entry date. If you are correct, you obviously, the student is in that grade level, you do a data exception. And this is a V, whenever you get a V2 error, that means that they don't agree with the whole grade 9 entry date, period. They have done a great job of creating a data table which all of them are compared to. And by this point, I would say the data table is probably pretty accurate because it's been reviewed and reviewed different times when people upload. If you are not sure about why that grade 9 entry date should be different, you have 2 different reports you can look at. The grade 9 entry lookup, that would be for a student you've never uploaded before, and the student ID search, which would be more specific, tell you exactly who uploaded what. And in that regard, you can definitely see, oh, the student was in 9th grade 2 years in a row. That's why the grade 9 entry date is as it is, okay? If you believe you are correct, then you need to do a data exception and explain why you believe it's correct. And they will either come back with, no, they've done their research and you're not correct, or okay, we're going to change it. And And obviously, if you are not correct, you need to change it in your file and in your SIS. We could also have an age grade validation. So the student is 16 and they're in 7th grade, and that does not make sense. Once again, do a data exception for that. Okay, data exceptions. I've had people do data exceptions where they have said things like, oh, I'm going to fix it later. I know it's supposed to be this. No, they can't ever allow you to upload inaccurate information. The only time to do a data exception is when you cannot fix the error, when whatever they are questioning is absolutely correct, even though it might be logical, it might not be logical. And therefore, you have to ask for an exception stating that, yes, they really are in this grade level or whatever it might be. But you cannot ask for a data exception for inaccurate information. And you can only ask for a data exception when you have cleared out all other errors that you can fix yourself in the file. Okay, Safe Schools is coming up, and we've got some things there that we can look at. We want to make sure that we have correct. Every incident has to have an offender, and you can actually have an unknown offender. And every offender has to have an infraction. You can't report something if somebody didn't do something. Appendix Z has all those infraction codes. And a couple years ago, they put in a rule which said that if a student is suspended or expelled but does not fit one of the infraction categories, you still must report it. And therefore, you must say why. It would either be an academic code of conduct, maybe they cheated, or a student code of conduct, they were misbehaving in some fashion. So if a student is mouthing off to the teacher, that's not one of the 54 infractions, but you might give them suspension. You would then need to indicate that. Some of them have a victim, and you can see that in Appendix Z. If you have a victim, if it has a victim, that particular infraction, you've got to state that in your victim file. And once again, you can have an unknown victim, or you can have a school building that's a victim. A mutual fighting is one of them that confuses people, because they like to think that, okay, Johnny started this fight, and poor Billy, all he did was respond. He's a victim. No, fighting has 2 offenders. Okay, so the alternate ed placement is another thing that can err, because it needs to be indicated on 2 separate templates, the incident offender as well as a disciplinary action. Okay, these are things that are coming up for you. Fire drill, the course instructor, school enrollment. School enrollment, you're always going to have school enrollment errors. There's really no way around it. That's going to be one of your most common errors. Okay, so if you have a wrong date in the fire and security, that is a date that they might consider to be a weekend or a vacation, that's going to err. If you actually did have a bus drill on a Saturday, then you do a data exception. Courses of rigor. If you're going to indicate that a course, for example, is dual enrollment, then it's got to have a dual enrollment course code. All of the course files have to be matching in one way or another. So you can't have a course code written one way in the course file and written a different way in the course instructor or the student course enrollment. So these are all the various things that you would need. The course differentiator can't be an FY in the course, but an S1 in the course instructor. All of those key fields have to be the same to match it up. And here's just some examples of how things could look different. Up here, we've got 4 math. Here we've got 025-4 math. All right. Like I said, I don't want to spend too much time on this because we have a lot to go over, but you can see there that all those things need to match. And in the course thing, course file, one thing to know is that luckily the state code, the alternate course code, is not a key field. So you can change that if you discover you have put something in there that's not correct. All right, and that's what it would look like if they did all match. Once again, these are course differentiators that are not matching. Everything has to match. Okay, let's back up here once. All right. School enrollment, that is the one that's going to get you the most and drive you the most crazy. Because if somebody put in an enrollment prior to this upload and then changed it, it's going to conflict. All right. And that requires you to do something about that. And it requires you to make sure that you're looking in all possible areas to see why it is airing out for you. So the first thing you definitely need to do is to get that school enrollment template from the warehouse, the Pims reports, or if you're in the Sandbox, from the Sandbox reports, because that's going to show you what you already have. You need to compare it to what you're trying to upload, and then you're going to be able to see why you have that error. Okay. The grad status must also match. So you can't say that they graduated in the enrollment, but that they did not graduate in the student. And here's an example of a WD09 code needing to match with an H code in the student. And we have the appendices, the E and AL, which are going to give us that information. All right, and there's just an example of what you would be shown, all the different WD codes and what they correspond to in the student file. Okay, everything must be exact in the school enrollment. You can't have one grade level in the student file and another grade level in the school enrollment, or one location in the student file and another in the school enrollment. They all have to match. So you might get a message that says you don't have a school enrollment record when in fact you do, but it does not match. WD11 and WD12 are actually not withdrawal codes. They are change of status codes, if you will. And it's important to remember that, because you can't end with a WD11 or a WD12, because you are not ending an enrollment. You're merely indicating that something has changed. Your WD11 can be a program change, a grade change, residency status, but you are in the same school. It must be followed by an R11, because the R11 is now indicating what that change is at this point. WD12 is for any changes that occur in another building. You have now changed buildings, and they must be followed by an R12. CTEs use EO5 and EO6 rather than the EO1. Okay, here's an example of what it should not look like. You have your WD12 followed by an EO1. That's what it should look like. You have to also have a common sense progression, and that's when you'll get your overlapping if you don't have that. So you can't say, oh, I entered and then I entered again. It has to be I entered, I withdrew, and then I entered. All right. You can't have I withdrew and I withdrew. Another thing to know is that last year's enrollment never impacts this year's enrollment. You never indicate that they were in one building last year and now they've switched this year. Every year starts out a brand new enrollment. It does not refer to last year. If you have something that you need to get rid of because it is an error, like here we can see we have an EO1 followed by an R11. That's not correct. You then need to get rid of that so that it will look like this. So it would be an EO1, WD11, R11. And once again, this is an incorrect. You can't, if you discover that, oh, I made a mistake, I have the wrong WD code here, you can't just change it by adding the new one in. You've got to get rid of the old one, and that's how you do that. PDE will not do any deletions for school enrollment, okay? You have to do those. So you would simply put the wrong enrollment record in there with a capital letter, delete, and then you would put the right one beneath it. Okay, so as I said before, the locations have to be the same, and you can't follow an EO1 with an R12. You would have to end that other location first, like that. When you're in the Sandbox, you're not going to be looking at Pims reports to find what has been uploaded to compare. You need to go to the reporting menu, and that's just an example of what that screen looks like, where you're actually going to pick a template to look at, because you need to compare it to Sandbox. Sandbox does not talk to Pims reports, okay? Sandbox is refreshed like every 2 weeks, but it does not, whatever you have in the Sandbox is not going to then talk back to Pims reports. Remember that when you upload and you get any error in DQE, maybe you're uploading Safe Schools and you've got 7 files in there and you get one single error, nothing got uploaded, nothing got processed. Okay, ETL, that is below the DQE section where we have all of our lists of errors, and it means extract, transfer, and load. If you don't get the green check there, you have not successfully uploaded. All right, and these are lists of all the possible things that you might find in ETL. We're going to look at each one of those quickly. So this is what you would see if you pass DQE. Notice that the DQE part is missing. It just says complete. That means you're good. But now we see red in the data status. That means that something erred after that fact. Anything that passed DQE has a possibility of being uploaded if it did not err in ETL. Okay, so this is what it could look like. Down below, you see our files, and we have a red in one of the files. So there we have to look to find out what exactly is wrong. They parse the file into pieces in the ETL information. Load, you don't need to worry about. The alert is going to be the same as the error for the most part. So you're only going to look at your errors because that's where you need to correct something and you need to see what it is. If you've got a 0, you don't need to look at that. You're only looking where you actually see a number. And up here, it's telling us how many records did not make it to be uploaded. Okay, so we need to look at that file. The ETL errors appear in a table. It can be a little confusing because they may not use the headers you're used to. They may not be in the same sequence that you're used to. So you have to keep scrolling until you find that X. In this case, what it's telling us is that a district code of enrollment has to be a Pims entity. It can't be a private entity. So if you put an AUN in there that is not a Pims entity, then they're saying, well, we can't find that in our district list, and therefore it errors. Student, you'll get this a lot. If you have uploaded a student in another file, but you did not put them in your student file, that's going to err. Funding district has to be a school district, cannot be a charter school or an IU or an APS. So you could get that error as well. And that's looking for school districts and it's saying, we didn't find this AUN in that list. Okay. Location code of residence is another one you'll get. And it could be because you have chosen a location that does not match the district of residence. Location code of residence has to be a building in that district that you have named as the district code of residence. Or if that location closed, perhaps it was open last year, it's no longer open, you're going to get this. It's going to say open date. It does not exist between the open date and the close date. And that can be confusing, but that just simply means it's no longer there. Looking at EDNA will give you all of that information. So EDNA is the website you want to go to find out all of your AUN information. And these are just plain old, it doesn't match. Okay. The course, you could have an error whereby you've got a course listed in a student course enrollment file that you don't have in your course file. Has to be there. You might have a PPID that for a teacher listed in a file, but they are not in your staff file. this is one that is often confusing. That does not mean staff snapshot as you and I think about it. The staff file actually contains everybody you have ever put into that staff file. You don't see that, however. You only see your current group of teachers and staff that you have uploaded. So when it says it's not in the snapshot, it's really referring to this year's current staff upload. It's not referring to a staff snapshot. Okay. If you have duplicates exactly the same, it's going to error. Cannot have two files exactly the same and upload, or two records, I'm sorry, exactly the same and upload them. So you're going to have to get rid of one of them. Pims Resources. Okay. The website, obviously, PDE's website has a data and reporting menu. And under there, you would find Pims. And you will find in a nice, neat little organized fashion, all of these blue boxes. And I just indicated what you might find in some of them that you might not be aware of. So if you wish to contact us at the Pims Help Desk, support desk, you would go to the Pims application support, and also my PDE suite support help is there as well. This one is you're logging into Pims or the Sandbox or the reports. This one has all sorts of data set guides, and here we've got Edna, shortcut to get to Edna, where all the AUNs are. Our Excel reporting tools, some of our uploads are done with a tool, as you know, such as the support upload. And this is our PA Secure ID and PPID resource area. Manuals and calendars. This is for post, okay? And that's your summit information. Okay. If we go into the resource area, these are the kinds of things that you're going to see for resources. This is FERPA, which is your Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. You may or may not have reason to need to go into there. Webinars and presentations, all the how-to guides, which are excellent resources for you. These are technical documents and my PDE suite help, a data dictionary. Oops, gotta go back here. This is a data quality curriculum. That's also good information because it's showing you where you can take courses if you're a Pims administrator. And we've got a shortcut to our DQN network as well. So this is what we might see if we go into the how-to guides. These are a list of how-to guides. So you can see that these are excellent resources for when you're not quite sure about the grad dropout cohort or the Keystone exemption data reporting instructions that you've just had to work with, your October staff and student assessments, course instructor dropout, all sorts of good information here. The special ed. So these are things that you would want to look at if you're not sure about how exactly to proceed with an upload. The calendar. Some of you may not even be aware that there are all kinds of tabs in that calendar. We've got the basic first tab, which shows us what things are due, what templates get uploaded, what the collection is called, ACS if required, and when that due date is, etc. But you will also see tabs for things like a change log, shows you what's different from this calendar from the last. You would also find non-Pims collections for some of you who might have to send up information that is not related to Pims. ACS summary. That's great because that has what you name the ACSs in there, in addition to other ACS information. People are not always aware that that's there. Here's a Sandbox refresh schedule for you, so you can see when the Sandbox is going to be down because it's going to be refreshed, in which case they take whatever's in Pims and place it in the Sandbox so that you've got more up-to-date information to work with. Pims dates. This is great because you can actually, you can sort things by date if you want to, or by other criteria like the collections, etc. And like people often like to look at it sorted by date because the original calendar doesn't have the dates in order. It has the collections and the dates in order. So there's all sorts of tabs on that calendar that you want to pay attention to because they can give you additional information or they can isolate information so it's a little bit easier to look at. Internal snaps. Unfortunately, when you do an internal snap, there's no going back, okay? You cannot fix it. So you want to make absolutely sure that you are ready for an internal snapshot. And the calendar will tell you when that's going to be taken. What you want to pay attention to is that not all internal snaps are taken for the snapshot date. And that can become a place of confusion. So they might be looking for information frozen on a certain date, say maybe January 10th, but they're actually not going to pull that information till January 20th. So what they have done is they have given you the opportunity to make sure everything is fixed by January 20th, but they're only going to look at the information based on the enrollment record and the student's record as of January 6th. So that's an important distinguishment to make. And oftentimes the internal snap and the pull date are the same, but they are not always. They're always going to be looking at your student and your school enrollment. Those you want to make sure are up to date by noon on the date that they are going to pull that information. And if you don't have your new information uploaded, they will take what is there. So you need to be aware of that. There are no overrides, no corrections. And once it's done, it is done. Very important. There are pre-snapshot reports in Pims reports that you can look at prior to the time that they will actually pull it. This is going to be very helpful for you because it's going to show you what exactly is going to be taken. You might look at that and say, oh my gosh, it says we only have 5 graduates. That's not right. I better fix that. So the pre-snapshot is very important. If you go looking at those things after the internal snapshot is taken, it's too late. You want to definitely do that. And we've got our volume, our user manuals. My suggestion is don't print them out. Don't print the calendar out either. They're easy to use in a digital format. And if they change, you're going to have to print out a whole new set of pages again. And that's a lot of pages. So volume 1 is, as you can see here, also it is found on the PDE website, okay, and volume 2, and our appendices. They used to have these appendix as part of volume 2. It no longer is, okay? They are separate appendices, and it's great because now you can sort them. And that's a wonderful tool to have, to be able to go in there and actually sort your course codes, sort your staff assignments, language, and the industry credential for CTE. So you want to download them separately. And this is where you can find the latest version of the manuals. This is an example. Hello?
A 15-minute warning.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're going to make it. Yay! Okay. This is an example of what the manual might look like. All right. We have our field number right there. So that's showing you where it's placed, how long that can possibly be. So you can't have a school year date more than 10 characters. It shows us the name of that particular item, whether it's required or whether it's optional. Optional, you do not need to put in, and whether it's conditionally required. This is telling us whether it's a key field or not. If it's a key field, you cannot change it by simply doing another upload. You would have to have that deleted by PDE by calling us and asking for a deletion form. Okay, and this is a definition of what we are looking for. If there are business rules, you will find them. So for example, it's saying that you can only have a PA Secure ID one time. This is the student file we're looking at. You can only have it one time in that student file. Keep in mind that the student file is the most current information. People often think they need to show historical information as well. The student file will never show historical information. It is only what is true as of this moment in time. So you would not put a record in there for when the student was had an IEP and for when the student didn't. You would only put whatever is true as of this point in time. And then this would be the eScholar name term for that particular field. And then sample, it'll show you a sample of what it might look like. And here we can see that for gender, for example, you only have a choice of M and F. You can't put the word male or put the word female. You've got to just put the M or the F. If whatever those values are is way too long to put in the block, like here we have the M and the F that fits in there neatly, you will see a reference to an appendix, okay? And in that appendix, you will find all of the acceptable values. Okay, and once again, this is important because it shows us what is key, which means you can't fix it by just doing another upload, and what is updatable, which means you can fix it by just doing another upload with a change for that value. The student file has all but I think 4 fields that are updatable, which is really a great thing for that file. Okay, volume 2. And there is an example of the table of contents. And you can see that anything that is stricken out, it means that it's been retired, as it's telling us there. You would find either don't need it anymore, or it might be, you know, in a separate area. Like we do have the course code still listed, but if you go to that area, it will tell you that you need to download that file separately. Okay. And by just clicking on these, you would go to that appendix, which is why using this digitally is a great idea. Pims reports, not doing much with that because there's a whole session on that, and that's going to change. And that session is going to be showing you what those changes are going to be. The reports must refresh if you're in production. Valid, if you go into just to look at a template, all right, that should be immediate. So if you just want to look at a student template and verify, that should be immediate. But production reports are not immediate. You need to wait for a refresh, which is from noon to 2. There's supposed to be another refresh at 5 a.m. And typically you're going to find that report in the folder that you are discussing. So if it is a Safe Schools report that you need to find, you're going to find that in the Safe Schools folder. They're pretty accurately named, and that makes it pretty easy to find them. The ACSs would also be in production and found in those folders. And your how-to guides that we looked at before are great to tell you what specific reports you might want to look at. And once again, those are the refresh times. If you try to log in during noon to 2, this is what you're going to get. It's going to tell you the login failed because it's not going to let you look at a report while they are refreshing. And we did talk about our internal snapshots, how important they were, no correction periods, etc. And to submit an online request to us, you would simply go to the PA website and you would click on the help request form. Okay. You also obviously can call us. That is greatly accepted. And you even have the option to leave us a voicemail if you don't want to hang on the line for a while, or if you're in a hurry and you just want to get it reported, and we will call you back. Okay. So those are the ways that you can contact us, and please do so. Don't ever feel you are bothering us. I've had people call and say, I've been looking at this for 3 weeks and I can't figure it out. Oh my goodness, don't do that. Don't even look at it for 3 hours. We can usually help you in short order. So please do not hesitate to call us. That's what we're there for. We're glad to help.